Today I'll begin covering stage 3 of the 9 stages of ego development. Ego development theory focuses on ego and how our sense of self shifts throughout our lifetimes. You can think of ego development as this story we tell ourselves about our life, our place in the world, how we react in it, and how our own story changes over time. By the end of this lesson, you'll be familiar with stage 3 in the 9 stages of ego development. Stage 3 begins around age 12, and it can last throughout one's life. My hope is that it brings you some clarity as well as self-forgiveness for your own actions and behavior. If you can achieve this acceptance for yourself, and it's my belief that you'll become more accepting of others who you may recognize as being in this stage today. My name is Johanna, and if you're new here, I provide content to help you learn to live by your heart instead of being driven by unexamined habits and beliefs that stem from our fearful minds. So I'll start with a quick background on ego development theory. It was originally pioneered by Jane Loevinger and then further developed by Susan Cook-Greuter. There are 9 stages, and according to this theory, we all progress through these stages sequentially in an ever-expanding worldview. Once we transcend a stage, that earlier stage remains part of our collection of responses. In other words, we can all regress to an earlier stage of behavior should we choose to. This series of talks begins at our early adolescence when most of us are in stage 3, also known as the diplomat or conformist stage. It's one of the conventional stages, which are said to be mostly socially programmed. Yes, that's right, socially programmed. So think for a moment who you might be at 16 years old if you'd grown up in a completely different country on the other side of the world or with a completely different family. You might have valued different things. Maybe you had different interests, you'd have more disadvantages or more opportunities. Now, how well do you honestly think you could be able to accurately describe yourself at that age? It would be difficult. Well, there are 2 more advanced stages that are also conventional or socially programmed as well. They're called the expert and the achiever stage. And together with the diplomat stage, these 3 stages make up 80% of the adult population. So according to this theory, 80% of adults are mostly products of our environment. Since the diplomat stage is a single numbered stage, it's also known as a stable stage as opposed to a transitional one. Some adults will remain at this stage for their entire lives. But stable stages they're generally more balanced because they're in harmony with a community and a worldview to which they connect in ways that fit their needs. We may increase our knowledge about these stages, but any transformation to a new stage is what changes the way we know. See, the meaning that we assign a given experience organizes our thinking, our feeling, and our behavior over a wide range of our functioning as human beings. The diplomat stage is said to refer to those who have an early adolescent frame of mind. In this stage, self-identity is expanded into a group, which causes a significant shift in thinking from me against the world to us against the world. So the self-identity is now defined by its relationship to a group. They don't yet have a sense of self as a separate identity. And because of this, there are no strong boundaries between the self and the group. He or she is defined by others in the group. So the relationships have this dependent, I need you quality. And this group could be the social group, a family group, professional, special interest, or even a belief group, or many of these. Being part of the group allows a person to feel safe, protected, and even powerful. But the price they pay is loyalty and obedience. So there's a codependency going on with the group. They feel responsible for the group, and what the group likes or approves of is more important than the individual. This person's emotions are really suppressed for the group, and it can lead someone to be quite vulnerable. If the group has a high social status, on the other hand, if it's exclusive, like a golf club, an Ivy League school, or maybe it's held in high regard, like a charity, then one can feel really proud and privileged to be part of that, better than the other people. Whatever the group identifies with, they do it with a total acceptance, and they blindly reject anyone who questions anything about the group. And this makes sense because to question the group that I'm completely identified with is in a way like to question my identity. So that's quite threatening for the person. And in this stage of ego, one wants so desperately to belong that they'll conform to the rules of whatever their group, their gang, their company, political party, or ism they belong to comes up with. They'll do what they can to preserve the group from within as well. So if there's a disagreement, this is the person who comes in and smooths things over. Maybe you know someone like this at work, or this is the person who's kind of the glue of the family. And the viewpoint they have is that you either approve of us, what we think and do, or you must be the enemy. There's no middle ground because it's too threatening for the self-image. And when you speak to this person, the language they'll use is carefully constructed so it's accepted. So it's overly positive, but impersonal, short and stereotypical, like everybody's nice, everything was fun, my parents are fine, vacation was great. Theirs and others' behavior is described in terms of always or never, as in we never go to that restaurant, or I always get up early. So there's not much of an individual self that gets exposed with this person. Their inner feelings are very stereotyped and predictable. They place a lot of value on their appearance, on displaying status symbols, gaining material possessions, on the reputation is very important. They're preoccupied with this social acceptance, and they're constantly trying to adjust to those standards. So they care deeply about other people's opinions and their evaluations. They may think a lot about how they seem to another person. So they're asking themselves questions like, what do other people in my desired group prefer? What did they think about me? And they put a lot of pressure on themselves with shoulds. And they feel a deep sense of shame and embarrassment if they can't fulfill all of these requirements. So they're really dependent on others for acceptance. They're constantly looking out for signs and worrying about how others feel about them. Any potential problems they might have are denied or dismissed. So they'll say something like, it's not a big deal, just look at the bright side, it's not that bad. The rules of their group are obeyed without questioning them. So a person in this diplomat stage will likely feel shame for their actions or consequences if they're not aligned with the group, because this group governs what can and cannot be done. So a person at this stage only needs to hear something like, that's not right, to just fall back in line, as It never really occurs to them to question, well, what's right and wrong for me? They just fall in line. They're in a sense powerless while they're fully dependent on this group for their identity. So I want you to now think back to any of your own decisions that you may have made to go along with someone else's idea of what was right, and just have some compassion for yourself. Don't judge yourself for trying to fit in or trying to please someone. At this stage of our ego development, you were a little bit stuck. We were all stuck. You couldn't yet see the bigger picture and choose yourself as an independent self to follow. So forgive yourself. It really was just a stage of life. And if you recognize that you're in this stage now, then according to Susan Cook-Greuter, it's fitting your needs right now, and it may continue to do so. Not all of us have a need to move past this stage. And according to the theory, most stages take 5 years to surpass unless there's some conflict that pushes us into the next stage. Carl Jung also believed that in order to become more conscious, one had to be able to bear conflict. However, the conflict he referred to is a product of the unconscious rather than of rational thought. So again, we may increase our knowledge about these stages, but the transformation to a new stage is what changes the way we know. So knowledge doesn't equal wisdom. Or as Albert Einstein said, any fool can know. The point is to understand. If you'd like to learn more, stay tuned for the next session, which covers the expert stage. And I've also included links related to the 9 stages of ego development in the description, as well as Susan Cook-Greuter's video series on ego development. Check it out, and I'll see you next time.